Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all over the world, I have a special guest sitting across from me right now. He's standing in at 5'5", 140 pounds.
Hey, 5'7".
5'7".
5'7" at least.
140 pounds of solid muscle, built like a Greek god. Don't look at him too long because your eyes will just burn out. He's so beautiful. I have brown belt from Team Redsavik Deerfield under Professor Barry Phillips, Juan Mongoose. I'm going to mess your last name up here.
Orozco.
Orozco.
Yeah.
What's up, Juan?
What's going on?
How you been, buddy?
I've been great.
Just training and living life. What have you been up to?
Lots of training, lots of training other people, especially like, personal training, stuff like that. Been doing a lot of that lately. And just living the life.
So are you training, still doing kids kickboxing? What are you up to?
I teach kids Taekwondo. That's pretty much how I make the bulk of my income, which is it's a great way to be in the industry, have plenty of time to train, and have the opportunity to teach something that I did, for 20 years. I started Taekwondo when I was like 6 years old. So it's kind of just like a ready-made skill set to go out and do.
Yeah, you're still a young, strapping lad. So you've been doing it 20 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Dang, dude, that is like, do you know anything else in life other than martial arts?
No, I know, what I've gotten from podcasts, what I've gotten from books, what I've gotten through my interests, which are mostly in nutrition and health and stuff like that. But I've known no other life other than martial arts every day, all the time.
Yeah. For all the martial arts fans out there listening, you all know the talks that go on in the gyms when the bro science is being thrown around, all the guys sitting here talking shop. Well, Juan is one of the most in-depth people that I know when we sit down and we just start talking about different things, like whether it's books, podcasts, this and that. Juan, you're definitely the guy. And like, what are you reading right now? I'm kind of interested.
Right now, the last thing I just got done reading was 12 Rules for Life. It's Jordan Peterson's book. Really solid, I think, recommendations on how to live your life and kind of strategies you can use to sort of manipulate the way that we already are. I think a lot of people try to deny the fact that, humans are animals. We have dominant structures. We have built-in systems that respond to that. And I think Jordan does a really good job of helping you work within the framework that you have to work within instead of denying that it exists, or giving you, like, a lot of self-help people just give you this airy notion that you can kind of do whatever you want and be successful. And Jordan's not like that. So that's definitely my favorite thing that I've read recently. And then just continuing to research the health and nutrition stuff. Rogan's got a great podcast right now with Dom D'Agostino, and I forget what the other doctor's name is.
Yeah, he's had two the past week that have been debating whether it's paleo. Paleo was Dom, and what was it against? I can't remember. Then he had the vegan versus the more meat-eating carnivore style.
Yeah, he had that one, but the one right now is like keto versus just counting your macros, for example.
Oh, that was the last one?
Yeah, and it was pretty interesting. I came into it really thinking that I was going to support the keto side, which I still think is better metabolically, but it was really interesting to hear the other guy talk about the meta-analyses of studies and how really you're playing with very small percentage gains versus a person just being able to stick to a diet that's lower in calories than their expenditure.
So what is your diet like then, as we speak?
My diet is, I fast every day till at least 4 o'clock.
Like how long in hours? Like,
anywhere from 16 to 20. And that's just a habit now.
See, that's mine. Mine's 14 minimum.
Right. Yeah. It never goes below 14. And I can't really imagine eating in the morning anymore. It's just, I'm not hungry until way later.
Were you somebody, because like when I started eating, like as a kid or whatever in high school, if I would eat in the morning, I would feel kind of sick. And I never really took that, knowing what I know now, I didn't have a good perspective on that. But as I get older, I'm like, why do I keep doing this to myself? Which kind of led to fasting, especially, when I was bigger and I was wanting to lose a lot of weight. Are you somebody, like, if you eat in the mornings, does that make you feel lethargic and weird?
Yeah, it'll make me feel sick like all day. Like, I feel like when I used to eat in the morning, I used to need a nap and then I would feel okay, almost like a reset. But at the same time, I was a kid, so people are telling me, you can eat French toast in the morning. It's good for you. I'm like, sweet. I'll just be sleepy. But I was really, really overweight as a child, like obese, all the way up until maybe 7th grade. And then basically my mom cut me off from most food, but in the normal way. So I would eat breakfast, and then that would be like typically pretty sugar-filled breakfast, but smaller. And then I would eat lunch and dinner, normal schedule, usually like, rice and some kind of meat product and something. But while it made me lose some weight, for sure, it never really made me lose all the weight. It just kind of kept me at this middle ground, and I never felt great. Like, I felt terrible all the time. I had all kinds of weird sleep issues and mood issues and stuff like that. And to the point where I had to take a lot of psych meds when I was in high school. And that actually all precipitated me when I was a little bit older. When I was like 18, I decided, I was like, I need to figure this out, because my body's not responding well to whatever it is that I'm doing. And then that's around the time when Dave Asprey was talking about his keto stuff. And then ever since that, I've been all in. Like, not eating during the day I feel like I have 10 times the energy than I did when I was eating a normal way.
Right. And I'm sure that you don't get that 2:00 feeling everybody talks about, and they make all the commercials about, where you're just tired and you need coffee or you need some extra food or sugar to keep you going. Like, explain that a little bit, like, go into depth. And I also have a question. When you were a kid, did you grow up in a big family? Because I grew up in a family, like, if you don't eat a lot now, there's not going to be anything later.
Right. Yeah. I did grow up in a big family, and it wasn't so much that of, if you don't eat now, you won't have to eat later. It was that I had a bunch of aunts, and they would all compete to spoil me. So one of them ran a daycare, and she just had Costco bags of Oreos and stuff all the time. And my mom would drop me off there because she had to work. So I would just stuff my face. And because I was her nephew, it wasn't like the kids that went to the daycare. It was like, you have free run of the pantry with no supervision.
What a child dream.
It was like a fantasy, to be honest. And like, they would give me money, and there was a Burger King right down the street, and I would immediately get that, walk out of the house without telling anybody, go get Burger King, and then walk back before anybody knew I was missing. So it was basically a paradise of just undisciplined indulgence.
I think now that explains why your jiu-jitsu is so quick and why you're so explosive, is because you had to get to that Burger King and back before anybody knew you were missing. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been sprinting to Burger King all the time, but it didn't help the weight issue though. The running to Burger King
still got a little bit big.
Yeah. So yeah.
So what do you break your diet now?
I break my
What's
diet.
What's a cheat day look like?
See, a cheat day for me is more like, I'll do perfect for 3 weeks in a row, 4 weeks in a row. And then for 2 days, if I feel like having a cheeseburger, I'll do it. But
is that with bun or is that without bun?
With bun, with everything. But
French fries?
Yeah, 100%, or cheese curds or something. But it's never regular. I'm not looking to work in cheat days into my life. It's truly a rare occasion.
Okay, so like, you're to the point now where you don't feel like you need a cheat day anymore.
No. And anytime, it's weird. Anytime I feel like I need a cheat day, I'll think about it and I'll be like, what's going on with me emotionally that I'm feeling like I need to cheat, or I need to not be disciplined, or I need to go to food for comfort. I look at it more like that instead of just, oh, I really want this. Because like, I know that it's not really going to give me that much pleasure, but there must be some deficit somewhere else that's making me seek out easy, like comfortable pleasure from food.
Well, is martial arts what you seek out now for, like, to cure stress, have an average normal day, to feel like hey, I'm being productive or of some sorts, like does your cheat days come on days you're training, or do they come on days you're not? Like, and how do you manage that? Do you feel okay about it if you have a cheat day and you're not on a vacation, you're not doing something special, you're at the house and you're not training? Is that acceptable to have a cheat day that day to you?
I never really beat myself up over having cheat days, but if I were to have like 3 cheat days in a row, I'd be like, what are we doing? Okay, you're on meat and greens once a day for the next month. How about that? You know?
So you just kind of punish yourself. See, I do that. I do that same thing.
I do
that same thing. Is that normal?
I don't know if it's normal, but I think it's advantageous because it really does, like, the self-shame keeps me really in line, you know? And I think people have like this notion of like, you always need to feel good about yourself. And I think that's nonsense. You know, I think the most progress I've ever made in my life are times where I've felt really bad about what I'm doing. So I kind of use that a lot, you know? I try to train every day. And for me, 6 days a week, I usually give myself Sunday to just sleep and relax. But if I'm not, even if I'm training 4 days a week, which most people are like, that's a good number, you know, I feel lazy and I don't feel right. And so I'll feel bad about it and then I'll train more. But it's not, it comes from a place of feeling guilty.
So like, you training 4 days a week, to me, I don't know if it's because I have this back problem or whatnot, but that would just destroy my body. How have you over the years managed to train so consistently, so much? And this is a question, you know, I want to ask. I should have asked Josh. I should have asked Javi. Now that I'm consciously been thinking about it just recently, I want to ask you that because you are the same type of person. You train so much. How do you stay healthy to do that? I don't like the listeners, I think, would love this because I can't figure it out. And I think 2 to 3 days for me is perfect just because I think, you know how it is on the mat. It's like it just smashes your body and you're hurting in multiple different places and this and that. How do you do it 4 days a week at least?
I think part of it is just the fact that, and part of the guilt too, is the fact that like martial arts is kind of my life and my livelihood. So whereas I feel like it's easy to be like 4 days, 3 days is good because you have all these other responsibilities. I look at it as my responsibilities outside of, you know, the couple hours a day that I teach are to train because this is like what I picked, you know? So it's like, this is my one thing. I better do my one thing. In terms of staying healthy, I think it was really hard and I don't think I could have done this much when I was a white and blue belt. Simply because I think your body adapts, first of all, and that takes time. And if you try to front load those adaptations, I don't think it works. I think your body needs a certain amount of time in years to change to be able to just handle it.
That was my next question. It does take years.
Yeah.
Because I'm 2.5 years in, going on 2.5 years in, off and on, that I feel like with that and the weightlifting, my body's finally catching up to like, okay, 2 days may be not enough now.
Yeah. My girlfriend Sally's sitting over there and she knows for a fact that when I was like a blue belt, I would come like the 3 days a week that I was doing jiu-jitsu, I'd come home like a baby. I'd be like, my neck hurts, my back hurts, my knees hurt. And, you know, I really felt like I couldn't train anymore or I was going to explode. But now maybe it's partially definitely physical adaptations. But it's also partially just through technique, being in the right place with the right efficiency to not overwork any one thing in particular. Now I train 4 or 5 days and I'm like, yeah, I'm a little sore. But
what part of that do you think is like pride and ego?
What part of what exactly?
Like when you're hurting and you come home and you're just feeling oh, you know, am I being a baby, this and that? Like what part of it is like our pride and ego is making us like go so hard that it's like, it's something you learn. I'm kind of figuring out slowly here. Like, hey, you know, I don't have to go so hard every day and it's okay to just tap and all that. Like,
oh yeah.
What part of that, like how far in were you when you kind of figured that out?
Man, 6 months ago, 4 months ago.
Sir, you're so close to the highest achievement that everybody's looking forward to of being a black belt and you're just now figuring this out. So that makes me sound ultra dumb because I'm so far from that.
Man, And I think it's partially a personality thing because, like I said, so much of my life is martial arts. Perceived failures to me were really devastating life events, you know? So if you're a car salesman who does jiu-jitsu twice a week and you get tapped, that's going to bother you, but you're going to go do your job the next day. This kind of thing is my job, and it's kind of like my self-identity. So those are big hits anytime. You know, if I would get tapped by somebody who I perceived I shouldn't be getting tapped by, that might bother me for a month. I might think about that for a month. Now, though, ever since like 6 months ago, I started to realize that was really limiting what I was willing to do on the mats. And that there's a point where guilt is good, like I said, and it'll keep you honest, and it'll say, you know, am I training hard enough? Am I thinking correctly about jiu-jitsu to not be in these positions? But there's a point where it goes so far that like you're gonna stick to your game, just what you know. You're gonna roll with certain people at certain times because you know, oh, this guy's fresh and I really don't feel good. That's dangerous.
Yeah, no, I've been there. I've been there.
But that's gonna slow down your growth. And the other thing is my body really a lot caught up to it in the early part of this year, to where I wasn't feeling good all the time. Even with my diet being correct, I felt like I had so many old injuries and so many like mental stresses from jiu-jitsu that it was like really affecting my quality of life. And then I thought about it and I realized, I was like, well, why are you letting somebody in a choke pop your neck 2 times before you tap? When you know you should tap, when you know you already shouldn't be there, because you want to go home at the end of the day and feel like, oh, I didn't get tapped today. But like, really, you should have gotten tapped today because you already made the mistake that you should have gotten tapped for. And that really made me realize that I should be taking care of my meat vehicle, and I should be allowing other people to have the victories that they earned, you know, instead of trying to be obstinate for my own ego, because all I was reinforcing was you can do the wrong things and not pay the consequences.
Oh, that sounds like a dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
But so like playing that game, like, because we're talking about you as an instructor and this and that outside of just jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, taekwondo, what, like with all those little nagging injuries, like, is that something you consciously think about? Like, hey, maybe I should tap now because I do have to go show somebody how to do this kick. Like, if my hip's hurting, why am I fighting this leg lock when I should just probably tap now and give somebody that, you know, are you still kind of, do you think about that kind of stuff when you're rolling? Like, hey, I still got to teach this class, maybe tomorrow, the next day. I shouldn't do anything dumb when it comes to leg locks or whatever because I have to throw some kicks.
Yeah, I definitely think about that. Not as much when I'm rolling, but like when I'm thinking about how I want to train, because I try as much as possible to not be thinking about those things while I'm rolling, or really anything at all. I try to just, you know, as cliched as it is, be in the moment.
Is it hard to be in every moment though? I find it hard to be in every single moment, but that's the one thing I appreciate about jiu-jitsu is I can be in every single roll. I can be in that moment every time. Obviously I don't have the Taekwondo, kickboxing, background that you do. Is that the same in that martial art as it is in jiu-jitsu? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, anytime I feel like when you're sparring, it's a great opportunity to be in that moment because it's a game. So any game is a great opportunity to be in that moment. I feel like it's much easier when you have a goal and a consequence and, some skill that you can just kind of turn your brain off and exercise that skill. And I feel like subconsciously your body knows to an extent that like you'll be more successful if you do that, And I think it's even more so in any martial art because, it's going to hurt if you're not there,
Right. Rory McDonald, I don't know if anybody watched the fights last night. I didn't, but I'm a big Rory McDonald fan. And he said when he fought Gegard last night, he got destroyed from what I've read. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I did not show up with the right mental preparation. I wasn't in the moment like I should have been. Like, explain to the listeners how detrimental that is if you're not in the moment, like even in a sparring round, of like how quickly things can turn south, whether it's, jiu-jitsu, Taekwondo, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like at a similar skill level, so you take, there's people I can roll with and be thinking about, what I'm going to have for breakfast the next day.
Right,
just because
like a
they're
new
new.
white belt kind of thing, yeah.
Not, anybody who's been doing it for a while could do that. It's not like a thing I'm saying that I'm good. It's just a thing. But if you get two people of a similar skill at any level, it starts to become about timing and recognition of what's happening. So you have to read the situation, and then you have to execute the correct response tactically right now and strategically 2 moves ahead with proper timing. So in a timing that's going to be their timing, right? And I think it's really simple. If you're thinking about what you're doing consciously, or you're thinking about what they're doing consciously, the moment where you should have been acting, you're thinking. And so now you're late. And then you're thinking about the next moment when you're late. And now you're even later. And then eventually you're going to lose, So that's part of the kind of barrier that that martial arts have, to where you just need experience. Because if you've seen enough of these moments, you've pattern chunked it, and you can allow just your subconscious, your programmed mind to react correctly at the correct times. But if you're just starting, you have to take those lumps, because you have to think about what's happening so that you can chunk that data for later, because you haven't been there yet. So I think anytime you have two similar skill levels, and, assuming that, one person doesn't have one attribute that's just way further ahead of another person where they could just dominate them using that, whoever has the superior concentration and ability to turn off their conscious mind will have the better timing, and then they're going to win.
So would that be something like, if play the old game that you always hear, like if you could go back and tell your younger self something, would that be something that you would tell yourself, like, hey, take the lumps, learn the patterns?
Yeah, 100%. And not so much stress about it, right? I used to do a lot of worrying that I was just going to suck forever, lots of that. But there's a certain amount where you just have to see the game enough.
Yeah. So like talking about, you stress about it, you worried about it, and always, kind of just being the smaller person, being overweight as a kid, in the transition of becoming to where you are now, where you're teaching it, you're coaching it, it's your full-time job, all that, where along the lines, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this correctly, like recognizing all this like pride and ego in it, like, and having to let it go for it is your job and all that I don't know, like, cause I look at them, like myself even, and the most common person, like it's hard to let that go. Mm-hmm. Like, and when it's your lifestyle, like it would be tenfold. So if you were to explain to somebody new of letting that go, like how would you go about that? Like when you're instructing people, I guess I would say, so when you have a class full of students.
So I think it's really hard to let go emotionally, and the way my mind works and kind of the way I explain it to people is just, you want to get as effective as possible as quickly as possible, right?
Is that where the drillers make killers comes into play?
Yeah, and that's everybody's real goal, and like I think a lot of people kind of float around and they go like, well, I don't actually want to like, submit more people than submit me, like I just kind of want to do it. I feel like they're lying to themselves, Everybody wants to get good, and I think the most effective way to get somebody to kind of try to start thinking that way is, this is going to make you the most effective the fastest. So therefore it's the correct way to think, right? It's not.
Wait, but is there a right or wrong, or do you believe that there's multiple avenues, multiple different perspectives and all that go with it?
I think that there's multiple ways to get to the same point. I think there are certain things that are universal. Like, for example, being able to be in the zone more than your opponent. Like, that is universally going to be better than not being that way. I don't think, and maybe I'll get corrected, I don't think there are any world champions or, even great regional competitors who would disagree with that. How each person gets there and why each person gets there might be different. But for me, the easiest way to think about it was just like, you want to get better. This line of thinking is not going to make you better. This line of thinking is. And now it doesn't matter whether one is emotionally harder. It's just the way you have to go about things if you want to reach your goals.
Right. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately with doing the podcast, being in school, working my job, doing jiu-jitsu and things like that. And I tell myself that I don't know if this is the right thinking. This is something I'm wanting to discuss right now with you is I feel like if you want to become great at something, you have to obsess over it. Mm-hmm. It has to be almost your every waking thing, the thought before you go to sleep, that kind of stuff. Is that something you think about? Like, if I want to be great at this, I have to obsess over it? Or do you think a good balance is the way to go? Like maybe more reading and applying different perspectives of, like, let's say reading a Jordan Peterson thing and then applying it to on the mats kind of deal? Or do you think obsessing is the way to go? I think if your goal is to have a happy life, and for that you don't have to be, in the elite class of something, then having a balance is great and is probably better, is probably less stressful. But I think to be great, like truly great at a single thing, you have to be completely obsessed, because greatness is just judged compared to the other people that are doing it. And all the people who are currently great are obsessed. Like, therefore, I was thinking about that, like Gio or Gordon Ryan. And you watch their IG stories and all that. Like, those people are just totally consumed with jiu-jitsu.
It's all they do, and you can bet if it's all they do, it's all they think about. So, if you're, it's all relative, and if that's what they're doing, anybody who wants to be in that class has to also do that. I think applying concepts from the outside world to something like jiu-jitsu is great in like a long-term sense to plan out maybe the way you're going to train.
Yeah.
But or there's certain concepts, that for some people can give them like revelations. Like if they don't know they have to be in the moment, and then they read some book that tells them they have to be in the moment, and it speaks to them, they might learn that and be able to apply that. But I think in the granular sense, once you understand those, pretty basic things, like you have to work hard, you have to, think strategically about what you're doing in the long term, and you have to program everything into your body, and you have to be in the moment while you do it. Once you know like those things, it's just about being more obsessed than everybody else. There's not much more you're going to apply to that from an external perspective. Yeah. Would you say you're obsessed with martial arts in general, since it is your life and career? Yeah, for sure. And like that obsession waxes and wanes as well, though. I feel like I go through phases of several months where I'm unhealthily obsessed, to where like I'll ignore people and things that I need to do to think about, what should I do in this position? Do you have the opposite end of the spectrum where you're like, maybe I should have thought about martial arts more than I did this month? Yeah, I have. And every few months I'll have this month where, like, again, for my standards, I'm not really training hard enough, and I just like any time that I train, I'm making myself go. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think everybody has those times, but I think for me it's a little exacerbated by the fact that I've been doing martial arts related things for so long. But I definitely go through these phases, but the obsessed phases are always much longer than the I got to make myself go phases. So it's not so much a balance. It's maybe more 60-40, 70-30 here. Like, yeah. What would you call it? Like, what do you think your balance is between obsession to not enough attention to the art? I would say it's probably like 65-35. When you look at it in time, like over a year period. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, over a year period, it might be like that. But then again, there's been other times where it's been a full year of like 100-0. Yeah. Like last year for me was like 100-0. Right now, I feel like I have other life things that I've needed to figure out that have been kind of barriers to me being able to really focus on it in the past. So I kind of thought like, okay, let me figure this stuff out and then I can go back to 100 again.
Okay. So I want to get into a question because I've got some other questions from fan questions, but I have one personally I want to ask first. Do you still remember, like I'm going to talk post 16. Obviously, if you started at a young age, you don't remember, but post 16, do you remember like maybe it's the first adult class you went to in any martial art? And like, were you intimidated? Like give the listeners like a little bit of feedback on yourself on that. And then also give them some inspiration to go join a gym or to follow a dream if they have one in martial arts.
Yeah. I remember my first jiu-jitsu class, like it was yesterday. The program was rather new and there, this was 8 years ago. Like there was plenty of jiu-jitsu in the city, but in the suburbs you couldn't find much. And this was at the gym that I work at, we started a jiu-jitsu program and my boss was like, hey, I'm going to make you do jiu-jitsu. And I really didn't want to because I was like around 16. I had a black belt in something already and I knew I was going to get crushed. Inside me, I knew I was going to get crushed. But one, I didn't want people to know that I knew. And two, I just didn't want to go through that again. Like I'd already been through one. This is really common for people who have done a martial art before. I'd been through something that had crushed me. I didn't want to do it again, but he made me. And I remember walking into class and one of the like blue or purple belts, he was like one of the guys that got brought down from the city. He was like, oh, you're a black belt in Taekwondo. Oh yeah, I bet you'll do good, huh? And he was kind of trying to.
He was instigating you.
Oh, 100%. He was like, you're not in Kansas anymore. You know what I mean? He's like,
yeah, Toto.
Yeah, we're gonna crush you. And but this again, people. I feel like people were way less welcoming in jiu-jitsu in that time because everybody was newer. And I just remember trying so hard to do anything and nothing working. But I also remember afterwards just this feeling of like, man, I need to learn this. Like, these people got some kind of secret sauce, and like for somebody who had only done striking, if you go with somebody who's grappled and you didn't wrestle or anything,
it's a whole new world.
It's like they have magic. They have some weird black magic and you don't want to not have it. And then after kind of really, because again, I was the kid, I was cocky. After really getting broken down, everybody was so welcoming. Like, oh, okay, you're actually going to stick around. Cool.
Dude, hang on. Do you think you would have if you didn't already have the ranking in Taekwondo that you did? Would you have stuck with that, or do you think it would have demoralized you? Because that's something the listeners need to hear. Like, jiu-jitsu is hard, and a lot of the times, especially for sure when you start out, you're always the nail. You're never the hammer.
Right. Yeah.
Do you think if you didn't have the experience of like, okay, I know what it takes to get good at something, that you would know, or like you would want to come back for more?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think actually having a belt in something else hampered me in a way because of that feeling of not wanting to be like a beginner again. But I knew right away that I didn't want a man to be able to dominate me in the way that I was getting dominated ever again. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to get good at that.
But you didn't make any excuses for yourself thinking that, like, hey, my striking's so much superior, you would never get me to the ground kind of thing? Or you thought you realized that, hey, this shark could drag me into this deep water?
Yeah. Well, we started that day with takedowns and I really thought about it, and it was pretty easy for me. I was like, okay, I mostly am in a kicking art, which means I have to be on one leg at some point.
Right.
And I was like, the second somebody just grabs my leg, even if they eat a kick, like they're going to take me down and then I'm going to die. So it was really eye-opening because before that I thought, they might be like really good, but like maybe if I'm really strong and fast, I could just stop all the jiu-jitsu things. And then I immediately realized that no.
You said, no, my striking's probably not going to help me, especially once I'm down.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew I was like, I'm going to be down eventually. It was really really clear to me that I needed to learn this.
Yeah, because I heard something. I don't know whether it was Rogan, wherever I heard it, whether it was Tate Fletcher. I'm not sure where I heard it, but they always said, especially after that first class that you go into in jiu-jitsu, you're either going to be like one of two people. And I wrote a blog on this just this past week. So everybody go to little self-plug here, headkickradio.org.
Do it.
I own the .com. I don't know how to switch it over, so don't harp on me. So right now it's just the .org. But the saying was like, after that first class, you either loved it that to the sense that you like want to learn what that person just did to you, and you're like, oh, like what we're talking about, what is that magic you just did to me? I want to be able to do that to somebody else. Or you're the polar opposite, where you just run from it because you want nothing more to do with it.
Right.
So explain like that thought process, like, so especially you, because you come from a different like perspective here of having all that Taekwondo and that experience and the ranking. That what brought you back to say, I really want to learn this because I know I can do this, like, and how important is that to beginners, because beginners need to hear this.
Well, I felt like I'd invested all of this time into something, and I never felt like, a lot of people will say like, oh, and I felt like I wasted my time, because right now I don't feel like I wasted my time, because
you're so close to the ultimate prize that that get away from like the importance, like don't do it for the belt, but
right.
When you are going through the journey and you get close, like it's kind of cool.
Yeah, 100%.
It's super cool.
It is cool. It's also nerve-wracking though, because do
you always question yourself? I feel like I would question myself if I was close. Like, do I deserve this?
Every day.
Because I feel like I always, like what I have right now in life, like this podcast, I ask myself, do I deserve this? And my answer to myself is always no, but then people, give you such positive feedback, and it's so confusing.
Yeah, to me, feeling-wise, at the end of the day, like, even Josh will message me. He'll be like, oh, you're like a one-stripe brown belt now, like, blah, blah, blah. And inside me, I just feel like I am wherever I am when I'm rolling. You know what I mean? Like, I don't take any pleasure or even pride really in having a rank, and I don't I don't feel bad about it either.
Yeah.
To me, it's just however I am in this particular role, that's where my skill level's at. And I don't look at...
Oh, so it's role by role. I like that.
Yeah.
And paraphrase, like, let's not make Josh sound bad there, because Josh does it because he loves everybody.
He loves
and
me.
he's kidding. Yeah. Because he's one of those people, he's like me. If he wouldn't mess with you if he didn't care about you.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
So that's how you know he cares. So I don't want him to sound bad really quickly.
No, Josh and I are great friends, and he obviously, he's my coach. Like, he has to tease me. That it seems like a coach's role in life, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to cover our bases there.
Yeah.
I was like, because the listeners heard Josh last week, and everybody has given great feedback. I'm like, hey, he's still a positive guy.
No, he's a super positive guy. And he's obviously too we're gonna tease each other more because we're peers in a sense,
That's what I want to get to that too. Is I think that's so important, because like we're talking, throughout this whole podcast so far, like we have a lot of self-negative talk, but it's so important that I think we do that because of all the nice things people say that don't do what it is we do. Mm-hmm. But then like when you have your buddies, that do what you do, and they give you that haze, kind of like the same way you give yourself,
right?
Because they're kidding, because they know the struggle you've gone through.
Exactly.
And I don't honestly, like, that's what builds the whole tribe and the whole crew together of everybody just loving people. And that's what I want to say about jiu-jitsu and what's so cool about what you do. Because you go to 3-4 different gyms?
I go to 2 regularly, but I mean, I've been to both of the affiliates of Redzovic in the city regularly at other times.
Right, but do you teach Taekwondo at the same place, or do you teach it somewhere else?
I teach Taekwondo at Deerfield, where I do jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know if it was, I kept thinking it was a third different place, because I know Javi goes to a few different places.
Well, Javi goes everywhere.
But
right?
that's what I want to say that's so cool about the jiu-jitsu community. That's the only community I probably have any right to speak about, because I don't know any other. And now that I'm like 39 minutes into this podcast, I realize right off the bat, I disrespected you because you're a black belt in Taekwondo. I probably should have let off with that, because that's probably the highest prestige thing, and I'm such an asshole.
I mean, it's weird, and it's, I take a lot of issue with most people who do Taekwondo, because they're very ranky, and I don't like rankiness. Like, I have a title, you have to call me this, or like I'm an illustrious brown belt. You know what I mean? I don't like that. To me, it's just like it's a necessary recognition of how long somebody's been doing something. And to me, belts aren't like kind of like a recognition. They're not like a medal. They're just like a level of expectation, right? So somebody should expect you to have this amount of knowledge, you know? So I don't like it's not as prevalent in jiu-jitsu, except with belts with some color to white belts. I feel like a lot of times there's, you know, a lot of jokes made towards that, but really it's only because of what you said. It's you want to make sure that like you're going to bond with people who have been through a little bit of the struggle, you know? Like I'm sure after doing it for a couple years, everybody's really accepting.
Right. So, but that's why I want to say, like, I'm to the point now where I'm in and I still look at like brand new day one white belts, and I look at them, I'm like, I'm sympathetic to them because like, I think I've been there. So as a black belt in Taekwondo, a brown belt in Jiu Jitsu, purple belt in the 10th planet system I'm in, all that, like, do you still look at people after all these years, the 20 plus years you're talking about, do you still feel a little sympathetic to the white belts that you're like, man, I've been there. I realize how hard this is and the struggle that you're about to go through if you stick with this.
100%. Yeah. And I always try to like introduce myself to the newer white belts and talk to them a little bit. But there's there's definitely sympathy, and like I always see like the great potential in each person, and I'm like, man, I hope you stick with it. There's a little bit of bitterness too, though, because there's a lot of people who have started and done 6 months who I've become friends with. And then they leave. And then they vanish.
And then let's bring this up. Let's throw
way more people than not, by the way.
Let's bring this up because let's throw some heat at me here. I know I look like that a lot to a lot of the 10th Planet Chicago guys. Like when I went into back surgery, I was out for a while. I didn't show up to the gym because I'm one of those people that I'm all in or I'm all out.
Right.
And so it's hard for me to go just watch people train. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was still watching YouTube videos. I'd pop in every once in a while. And then when, I came back and then I left, injured again, I was out. Like there was a lot of people that I lost a lot of friendships, like even through the gym, because I knew they thought that like this dude's never coming back.
Well, it's tribal, like you said. So it's like you're either in the tribe or you're out of the tribe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I never looked at it like that. And I've never looked at it like that with people that have injuries, because that's a completely different thing. Like you can't fault somebody if they had an injury and they can't train. Like how are you going to, I felt more like, man, this really sucks for Steven, because I know he wants to train and his body's just not letting him do it. The issue for me comes with people that are like, oh, I'm just too busy.
Yeah. But I mean, have you ever felt like, because this is my thought process, and the whole injury thing is, I don't think I'm a tough person, but I realize now looking back playing Monday morning quarterback that I was being too tough for my own self throughout the whole process when I was hurt. Instead of just toning back my training, it was like, oh, let's go 5 days a week or let's go no days a week.
Right.
And I think that's hard for a lot of people to conceptualize. Like I always felt like I had something to prove. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is that I had something to prove. How do you deal with injuries now? Because you are on the mat.
Yeah. Pretty much if I try to really go case by case. So like, for example, I hurt my back really bad last year, at the end of last year, and it was one of those where I was like, I can't touch mats for a month and a half until this is somewhat okay. And then I was like, I can't do these lifts, and it's just something you can't do,
But did you still show up and put in your time watching and maybe learning something from a visual perspective?
See, I don't do that. I don't, and I get people, I know people all the time will be like that. Now, if I can rep but I can't roll, I'll go.
But what if you're just sidelined sitting there?
I won't go. And for me, it's just like, let's take the opportunity to make me really miss jiu-jitsu right now.
Yeah. See, and that's what happened to me, because the whole time I was out, I wouldn't go.
Right.
I mean, I would still watch it. Like I was saying, YouTube University here. And I mean, that's what it is. I've learned so much stuff. I think it's made me a better person. It's sick to say. And I was that person. I could not go. I could not bring myself, because if I was there, I had to do it. Mm-hmm. And I knew if I was to do it, I can't just rep. I'm to the point now where I think I've been around it long enough I could just rep, but it's so hard, especially for a beginner, to just rep.
Yeah, and it's even just repping though. I mean, there's so many times where you'll start getting animated and like have some like start play rolling with your friends.
Yeah, like I love this because I'm gonna use a 10th Planet Chicago euphemism, however you say it, like Conway.
Yes, shout out to Dan Conway.
Shout out to Dan Conway. When you just you play around, it's a little horseplay, and next thing you know, you're kind of in a full blown roll, and then whether the instructor's trying to instruct or something's happening and it's not time to roll. Right. The next thing you know, you just see Conway. So like I would do that. Like I would get antsy if I was to sit there and I was just a rep. I would definitely start Conway. I really would.
Yeah. And, it's hard because rolling is also like the reward. That's the fun part. It's fun, especially once you've done it for a little bit. It starts to get really fun. But I never felt like, there was any. I don't feel like people have to come watch when they're hurt, and a lot of times it's like I don't understand why they're there, because a lot of times they're not watching. You know what I mean? They just kind of want to be part of the tribe still, which is fine.
And see, that was my biggest fears, because I didn't want to just go because like I'm like, oh, I'm only here to keep friendships alive. Like when I go to the gym, while I can get on the mats, like I keep my friendships, but I'm there to learn. I'm there to become better. And I always felt like a poser, an imposter. Like if I went and I wasn't going to get on the mats, I feel like I'm just kind of, kissing butt, trying to keep friends. And I'm like, hey, I love you guys. I love you enough that if we're going to be friends, we're going to be friends off the mats.
Right.
And everybody's friendly. So like, and I feel like we vibe on that same sense of like, that's why we don't go when we're extremely hurt and we can't even rep.
Exactly. To me, I don't understand the point. I don't think you learn that much from just watching, to be honest. Like I think you can do mental reps, but that's active, But I think like watching class and trying to pick up something new from just watching, like, yeah, you might as well watch a YouTube video. But even then, it's like, are you going to sit there for 15 minutes and really try to imagine yourself doing the rep in your head? Because if you're not, you're going to forget that.
Yeah.
In the next 10 minutes, it's going to be gone. But I mean, I've seen people go as far as being injured, going to watch, and then asking the instructor if they're going to get credit for class today. It's like
what? No,
kind of you're credit?
Not. Like, is this college? Or we?
Well, see, that's the thing about 10th Planet.
Marked for absent.
It's rare that 10th Planet is completely, not 10th Planet in general, but Chicago is ranking is totally based on Josh's subjective opinion of how well someone's doing. And that is my favorite thing that's one of my favorite things about that school, because that's how I think it should be. Like, you could go to 700 classes, and if you just don't have the skills or the knowledge, you shouldn't get
promoted.
You shouldn't get promoted. It doesn't matter how many times you went. You know what I mean? But most other schools are not like that anymore. And I'm.
Do you think it's because of money thing?
It is because of money, and that's what happened to Taekwondo when in the early 2000s. That now everything's a McDojo and everything's watered down and everything's really it's a sad state that art's in. I see that happening to jiu-jitsu, and it makes me really sad. And I don't think it would happen as much because there's so much emphasis on sparring, but it's true. Like most people need a reward, a cookie to keep coming, and that cookie is a stripe, or that cookie is the belt. And if you want to keep a school open, you got to give out, a comparable amount of cookies to this other guy, because otherwise you'll lose people, or they'll switch, and it's a really hard, as somebody who manages a school, it's a really hard position to be in, but that really scares me about the state of jiu-jitsu nowadays.
Well, see, I want to talk about that because you're a 2-stripe brown belt, right?
One stripe.
Okay, so you're 1-stripe brown belt. In the no-gi system, we don't do stripes. So I wanted to talk about that. Like, do you feel, and I don't want to bash on anybody's jiu-jitsu, because I know for a fact, not only do I have family that does gi jiu-jitsu, I have friends that listen that do gi jiu-jitsu. I'm not, trust me guys, I promise you I'm not bashing on you, but do you feel in your perspective that the stripes are kind of, is it tied to a money thing? Like, hey, you're putting in your time? Because like in our style of jiu-jitsu and no-gi, under Josh, I can at least say, and I think it's all no-gi. Mm-hmm. Like there's no stripes. So you never know really technically where you are. And I think that's kind of also a cool thing, because we always assume the worst, or at least I think a lot of us do. And I always assume like I'm a day one kind of guy. Uh-huh. So I don't have to be like, okay, I'm 3 stripes. I'm 1 more away from this next belt.
Yeah.
So do you think that the stripes, do you think they're a good thing or a bad thing, is essentially the question?
Yeah. So, okay. I think the thing with stripes is, first of all, gi jiu-jitsu didn't used to have stripes. Stripes were, as far as I know, brought about when jiu-jitsu moved here to the States, and money became more of an issue, and the perception, and I don't know if it's reality or not, was that Americans and the culture of instant gratification that exists here needed a more consistent reward system than just 5 belts to keep going, right? And so I don't know if this is a bro legend, but it's definitely what I've heard, that's how striping came about in the first place. I don't think it reflects on gi jiu-jitsu as a whole, because I know tons of badasses in the gi, you know?
We could list them all day, and it would take the rest of this podcast.
And like from the macro scale of the best in the world to the guys that are just around here, and like they mostly do gi, and they're great, right? But I definitely think that as a whole, stripes are a negative for the art, but they are positive for business.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, I want the two perspectives. If you're the business owner and if you're the practitioner.
Yeah. So if you're the business owner, it creates some problems. And I mean, I've seen problems at gyms before, where, you know, 2 people theoretically started on the same day, and one person gets a stripe because they're considerably better. You know what I mean? Like, just objectively, they are. And the other person is livid and like threatening to quit, or just visibly upset that they didn't get a stripe too. And to me, that waters down what I loved most about jiu-jitsu when I came to it, which was that it was all just real. You knew how you did against this person. You knew kind of how good you were, because you're there, you're feeling it. But now I do feel like there's a lot of people who just either just want the rank, or think that somehow the rank is tied to their actual skill, which I don't agree with, you know, or they're just focusing on it too much, you know, when to me, like, the only thing that matters is the skill level. Like, if you told me right now that I could be a coral belt, okay, but I would be at the same skill level that I am now, or I could be a white belt and I could tap Leandro low, I'll take that white belt all day.
Yeah.
Call me a forever white belt.
That's what I call the Demetrius Johnson. Remember that nasty, like, flying armbar he just did, where he flipped the guy, I think it was Ray Borg, flipped him through the air and then armbarred him. And don't forget, Demetrius is, air quotes, a white belt.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd way rather be that good at a white belt than be, you know, okay, mediocre, and be and that's a striped black belt.
That's a perspective I want people to take in life. Like, it's how I kind of view it. I view it as in, like, nobody should count taps and like who they're tapping in the gym, but we all know we all do it.
Yeah.
Is I look at something and I know, like, hey, I may be this, but I tap this. And I look at it as like, if we're in the streets together, if I can do this to all these bad people at the gym that are so good, you know, I mean, we all know we have our days that we're the hammer. We all know we have our days that are the nail.
Right.
And to me, like, that's kind of what matters. If I know, like, I feel better knowing, like, hey, maybe if occasionally I could tap a purple belt, if I could tap a brown belt, you know, and if you're good while you're, you know, white, blue belt or whatever, and you could tap a black belt, let's just say on a really good day, you know that somehow that translates to the streets.
Right.
And that's what jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, boxing, everything should be, is like, hey, it's all self-defense at the end of the day, unless it's your one main objective to become the best of the best in the world in that sport, and that's all you practice, or MMA or whatever, then that's a different thing. But if you're just an average Joe like me, it's cool to know that, hey, there's really, you know, awesome people out there, but I can still kind of hold my own. Just because my rank doesn't say that, it's cool to know that, hey, I can defend myself. And I think that that's the perspective. I don't know if I'm just being selfish, but I feel like that's the perspective we should all have, is just, hey, don't like brag about those times you tapped a purple belt, a brown belt, a black belt, if you're a blue or a white. Just enjoy the fact that, you know, on the streets, if we got into an altercation and that person is trained, I may have a shot on a good day.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad perspective to take at all. And I think a lot of people, going back to what you're saying about tracking taps, for example, it's like, yeah, you know, you really shouldn't be like a jerk and be like, oh, well, I tapped this person, and this person, so that means I'm automatically this good, and they suck, and I'm better. You know, that's stupid, right? But there's a lot of people that are like, well, you shouldn't care like who you tap or who taps you or what you tap to or what you tap them with in the gym at all. And I'm like, well, then how are you going to track whether your training is effective or whether you're making progress?
Right.
Like there needs to be some kind of objective way to say like, yes, you're getting better. No, you're not getting better, you know? And like, you could feel better, right? But if everybody's submitting you and you're not submitting anybody,
Right.
like,
But
are
let's
you?
be real. Like, we can't let that go to our heads.
No, nobody should let that go to their heads. I feel like it should just be like an empirical tracking mechanism that you use personally, you know? It doesn't make you better than that person. And especially like anytime that I've tapped somebody who's a black belt, like, I don't think I'm better than them at jiu-jitsu. I just think I caught them with something smart at a good time, you know? Same thing if like I've been tapped out by white and blue belts. Like, I don't think they're better than me at jiu-jitsu, but they caught me doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But if you look at just from a personal assessment standpoint of like how you're doing in that sense, you can kind of gauge whether you're getting better, or maybe you need to work on these specific things, or maybe you're not training hard enough and you're getting worse. But I definitely don't ever think it should be like a thing where you think you're better than other people.
Right.
It's just, are you getting better compared to what you were doing last month? You know?
Yeah. So that's my thing. Is like, always be better than the person you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's flipping burgers at McDonald's or whether that's on the mats in Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, whatever it is that you're doing in life, always just strive to be a better person than the guy you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Relationships, all that. And so that I want to segue with that one into like, how important do you think it is for women to do a martial art for self-defense? Especially, you know, in the light of all the political news of like all these scams of politicians being, you know, bad humans way back in college and this and that. How important do you think it is for, you know, especially fathers and mothers that are listening, like to teach your daughters a martial art to prevent that from happening? Because we can't trust, you know, guys or even girls in some situations. You can't trust people.
Right. No. And I think it's really, it's critically important, but I don't just think it's a martial art, you know. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they should be doing jiu-jitsu specifically, because I think of every martial art that there is, there's none that allows, you know, a smaller, lighter person to overcome a bigger person with efficiency like jiu-jitsu.
Okay, so I want to, while we're still in the same question, I want to ask the same thing to you. Because you would tell somebody that if you had both your black belt in Taekwondo and jiu-jitsu, which would you value one more than the other?
Yeah, 100%.
But I mean, like, talk sport specific and then also talk self-defense specific.
Okay, twofold. One, from a sport specific standpoint, even just looking basically at the scarcity of it, you know, like I have my 4th degree in Taekwondo, so I'm technically a master. I'm doing air quotes with my hands.
I should bow down to you right now.
Nah, please don't. It's no, I would turn red and I would just I couldn't do it. But you know, there's great value in that. I mean, I know a lot of Taekwondo, you know, but I don't feel like because of that I'm, you know, that much more protected in a dark alley, you know? Basically, anytime that I see a threatening situation, I don't think like, oh, no, it's okay. I'm a black belt in Taekwondo. I'm going to be able to handle this. I think, oh, man, if I shot in on that guy and took him down, I could probably hold him down for a while until the cops came. You know what I mean?
But what if he had buddies? Like, there's always a multiplier, a game changer.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's kind of where I think it's really nice for me to kind of have both, because the way I think about it, and it's a common strategy in the UFC, I can kind of kick all I want because if I get taken down, they're just in my guard. You know what I mean? Which is fine, you know? So it's great to have both, but like not everybody has a 16-year time investment to get, you know, high-ranking belts in two things. And the way Taekwondo works and the way the belt system works is a black belt is equivalent to a jiu-jitsu blue belt.
Like, no joke?
No joke. Because of the time. It's all time. And so what happened to jiu-jitsu, or what's happening with stripes?
I have a question. Before you keep going any further, am I going to get a bunch of hate comments about you shit-talking Taekwondo right now?
I might get hate comments, but like I'll say this to everybody's face because like, you know, anybody who's in the industry and doesn't know this is either A, too new to understand it, or B, lying to themselves. So when you look at the time, a person can get a black belt, a 1st degree black belt in Taekwondo in 3 years. Okay. That's jiu-jitsu blue belt timeframes, right?
Hang on, let's fast forward to next week. Steven signs up for Taekwondo for the next 3 years.
Steven just got an honorary black belt from.
No, but keep going. Like, explain that out. Like,
yeah, and so the same way that there's stripes in Jiu Jitsu, there's 9 to 12 belts in the regular Taekwondo system, but then once you get it, then there's 9 degrees of black belt. So basically, the way it breaks out to be is time-wise, which equates to skill-wise. A first-degree black belt in Taekwondo is a blue belt in Jiu Jitsu. A second-degree black belt in Taekwondo is a purple belt in Jiu Jitsu. A third-degree black belt in Taekwondo is a brown belt in Jiu Jitsu. And a fourth-degree black belt in Taekwondo is finally a black belt in Jiu Jitsu.
So is that like your true 10,000 hours? Like
exactly.
The Malcolm Gladwell thing?
Exactly. Like, anybody who gives out a fourth degree in less than 10 years is a charlatan, So it would be unacceptable to do that. Give somebody a fourth degree black belt in Taekwondo in less than 10 years.
So what is the highest ranking in Taekwondo?
There's 9. So if you look at the Jiu-Jitsu belting system, you have degrees after black belt. So then 5th degree would be like your first degree black belt, and so on and so forth. So that's the misconception that's intentionally created by the industry, is that like, oh, you have a first degree black belt in Taekwondo, you have some kind of mastery. It's well understood. And it's even told to students after that point, like, okay, this is just the beginning. It's like, because you just got your blue belt, Right.
So that's so wild. I never knew that, like, about Taekwondo. I always assumed it was very similar to the progression that Jiu Jitsu is.
No, yeah. And it's just Jiu Jitsu progression broken up into way more belts.
So let's bring it back to instructing and teaching females, whether, like, and I want to be more specific, like, if we have daughters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we have daughters, do you want them to I say obviously, like, do you want them to learn both, or do you prioritize, like, okay, maybe we can't make Taekwondo tonight because you have dance or something, but we're definitely not missing jiu-jitsu the next night?
Right. Well, I think partially it depends on the age. So I think if you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe, and you're like 4 to 8, put some time into doing some Taekwondo. It'll give you a lot of really good dexterity. It does help athleticism, I think. And it'll teach you how to learn a martial art, because it's great for that. It's great for discipline in childhood in a way that jiu-jitsu, I feel like, is not being used just in the way it's instructed, because it's kind of a more mellow art in certain ways. I think it's great for that. But I think if you have a 9, 10, 11-year-old daughter and you have a choice between doing Taekwondo and doing jiu-jitsu, you should definitely do Taekwondo. Definitely do jiu-jitsu over Taekwondo.
I was about to say, whoa, this has not been the whole talk of the whole evening.
You should definitely do jiu-jitsu over Taekwondo. And even what you said about having multiple, assailants, it's like, while that does tragically happen to women, most, for example, sexual assault encounters are what? They're one-on-one, right?
Yeah, true.
In which case jiu-jitsu
happens in the bedroom.
Exactly. In which case jiu-jitsu is perfect. It's like it was designed for that,
Right.
So, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so... Huh. I mean, now that you say that's so true. But do you think it's important to have that striking background? I mean, as a female, or do you think it's more important if you have a son?
I think it's more that might be controversial in and of itself, to admit that I think that there are gender differences. But I definitely think that your son is more likely to get in a fist fight.
So
what is it?
He should have some stand up.
He should probably have some stand up. Now he should have some understanding of stand up, and then he should have some wrestling and some jiu-jitsu, to where he could just be like, all right, we stood up for about as long as I wanted to. Now I'm going to take you down. But if he does get in a situation where he's, there's 3 bullies from school, he's going to want some stand up. He's going to want to know how to move his head. He's going to want to know how to throw a jab and, do the basics. But, and anytime we're going into a scenario of like, pick one, I'll always say pick jiu-jitsu, because I think it's the most applicable to the most situations.
Okay. So next question. This is actually this is a fan question. So I asked the fans, if to comment in the section underneath the post if they wanted their name read aloud. And surprisingly, the few people that commented in, they sent direct messages because they want to remain anonymous. So these people are going to remain anonymous.
Still love you guys, though.
And one of the questions was, Juan, do you see yourself teaching jiu-jitsu or taekwondo and opening up your own school someday?
Yeah, that's always the goal. And I definitely do. Whether it's opening my own school or just kind of taking the reins of the place that I'm at, that's always kind of been the plan. But I'm really excited for that, and there's definitely, I'm young enough to say that there's some things that I want to try that, they may or may not work out. But like, for example, the breakdown I just gave you about Taekwondo belts, like I would like this industry to be more honest about that.
So do you find yourself, if you're doing Taekwondo, you're a harder instructor to earn a stripe and a belt under?
I would definitely like to be. And, I would like to make it mandatory for anybody to get that first degree black belt in Taekwondo, that they have to have, which I would want to provide, commensurate training up to a blue belt in Jiu Jitsu in order to get that. Because I think it's a great disservice, even though it is, a singular art, and I don't think it's anybody's fault that it's not taught together. I think I would feel wrong getting somebody to that point where they felt like they could defend themselves and not even giving themselves like the base, or not even giving them the basics of fighting on the ground.
Yeah. So like, what do you do when you have that parent that's like, oh, you're not belting people because it's a pride issue, but is it more reality of like, no, I want you to be able to legitimately defend yourself?
Well, that's the thing, is they never come up to you and say that.
Right. It's all the parents talking amongst each other.
Yeah. And then they just call and they say like, oh, we're busy. And then we're going to, we're not going to renew next month. Can you put us on hold? And then they never call you back, know? So
that's why I think it would be hard to run a business.
It would be hard. And I would love it if they would come to me, because I think if I sat down with them and I really explained it to them, like, I want to give your child some value, and it's not giving them any value to give them a false sense of what they can do, then I think a lot more parents would be like, okay, you're right. But most people don't want to have that conversation.
Right.
It's not, and they don't want to have that conversation with their child. Why am I not getting this belt? Why is Jimmy this belt, but I'm not this belt? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I've seen it in baseball. I've seen it in football. I've seen it in basketball. I've seen it in wrestling. I've seen it everywhere.
Right. But I think if you design your business model to not be overly dependent on one thing, then each thing you can kind of do with more of the ethics that you choose,
Right.
If you only teach jiu-jitsu, man, you got to keep every jiu-jitsu student you got, because they're paying the bills. Same if you only teach Taekwondo. But if you have Taekwondo and jiu-jitsu and you have fitness classes and you have, you sell supplements out of your place and you.
Do you think that's where it starts to get a little murky, a little watered down when you're selling things at the front desk?
I think so. I think so. But I think at the same time, it depends. I think there's a difference between carrying things and selling things. I think there's a difference between if you're like, all right, like let's say like what's a product that I use? Like I take like Life Extensions multivitamin, right? I have no sponsors. I have no financial affiliation with them at all. I just happen to take it, right? And I think it's really good. And I recommend it to the people that I know. So like I think if you had that just at your place with a price tag under it, but you never said anything to anyone, that's not very skeezy. It's just you really think a product is good, so you're like, all right, well, I carry T-shirts, I'll carry this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, T-shirts are one thing because like a lot of people that do go to a school, they do want to rep the brand that they're learning under and this and that. And I get it because, man, I bought 10th Planet stuff. I bought Valco stuff. I have family at other places. Like if I was to go down there, I would buy that just because I'm supporting what it is they're doing and things like that. But like when it comes to like that health and wellness thing, it's like not one diet fits everybody's lifestyle. Not
True.
Everything. So like it's hard to preach that stuff, but you see it all the time. Like I've been to gyms like coming in and out in different areas when I'm traveling or something, and I'm like, why is this person selling? We're just on the multivitamin talk. I'll just say multivitamin, right?
Right.
Like, it's like, why are you selling this protein powder? Why are you selling this creatine?
Yeah. I could see how that would be weird, but I don't know. There's a couple things that, like, for example, I don't think everybody should be taking even the same protein supplement. You know what I mean? But like, I think everybody should be taking vitamin D. So whether it would be that or whether it be like having some professional nutritional counseling available through the spot, I would like to have wherever I run in the future, not so much because I care about making a profit off of it. I mean, obviously everything's a business and you want to make a little bit off of everything you do, but I'm super passionate about people fixing their diets and lifestyles, and I don't think correct information is available to most people. And I've met some nutritionists and registered dietitians that when you talk to them, they're giving recommendations that you would have gotten off a pamphlet in the 90s, and in my mind, they're going to negatively impact people's quality of life.
And that's what you're trying to avoid.
And that's what I'm trying to avoid. And I would like to have it more popularized, people who, not popularized, but available, people who can be a counterbalance to that, you know? Now, you could easily say that what if my opinions or people that I would hire's opinions are wrong, and those people would say the same thing about me, you know? But I think there's a lot of evidence towards certain things nowadays, you know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of study data towards, for example, intermittent fasting.
Right. And
Seems
which you
to
and
be
I
a
both
positive.
are big on. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems to just be a positive. No real negative studies on that.
Yeah. Well, and Josh and I were actually talking about this the other day because, you know, he said he was talking about because, you know, he's heard me talk about it. And he goes, hey, man, I read an article that it's nothing more than just calorie restriction. And I looked at him and I said, honestly, I go, Josh, I'm not a scientist and all that. I'm not a nutritionist. That's exactly why I do it, is because I'm just restricting my calories in a day, because I know that I can be such a fatty. I will overeat if I, you know, just don't restrict my eating window.
Right.
And so do you do it for the same reasons, or do you do it because you believe in the actual health benefits of, you know, what the claims are on the fasting, of how like it helps your, metabolism and your metabolic rate and your, all that stuff?
One reason I do it is definitely for that just, it's way easier. Like, not only is it easier to eat less calories, that meal that you do have feels so much more substantial,
right? Because
you're squeezing all your day's calories into one or 1.5 or 2 meals. You know what I mean? It feels like you're really eating when you're eating, you know?
Right.
Which is a good feeling to me.
And it makes you choose better foods.
It does. But I definitely started, I definitely think Dr. Sachin Panda's work on intermittent fasting is, you know, some of the most compelling research. And if anybody's unaware of it, he has a series of great podcasts with Dr. Rhonda Patrick on Found My Fitness, where he goes.
Is it Found or Marvel? I can't remember.
It's Found My Fitness.
Oh, okay. I'm getting a shout out to Shamir down in Tennessee and Marvel My Fitness in her gym. So if you're in Knoxville, Tennessee, go to Shamir's gym.
Do it.
She'll train you up the right way.
Yeah, but if you want to listen to really really technical podcasts about nutrition studies, listen to Found My Fitness. But basically what he talks about is that when you ingest food in the beginning of the day, you have multiple circadian rhythms in your body. So you have the circadian rhythm in your brain that regulates the hormones that produce alertness.
And does that also do the night and day thing too?
Yeah, that's your night and day cycle for your brain. But your body also has night and day cycles controlled by your liver. So if you eat throughout the day with anything less than a 10-hour break, but you know, more is better, then you're depleting these enzymes that your liver is supposed to be producing when you eat, and you're basically telling your body that it's awake all day, so it's never resting, and you're not giving it any time to digest the backlog of food that you have going. So it's too big of a
and that's
fire.
when it starts putting on fat and holding and storing and all that.
Exactly, and that's where not only putting on fat, but it's where it starts throwing fat places it's not supposed to be. You know, that's where it starts throwing like triglycerides and, you know, too much sugar into your bloodstream, because it's like, we need to dump this somewhere quickly.
Right.
So I'm really big on that aspect of fasting as well, and the longevity aspects of fasting as well. And there's great research by Dr. Walter Longo, who was also on Found My Fitness, about regulating the expression of insulin-like growth factor 1 throughout the day through not eating, and how that leads to longevity by suppressing, you know, things like tumor growth, and by you know, helping your body essentially consume its broken cells, you know. So I'm really big on that aspect as well, and I think it's gonna really, it really made sense, the rationale behind it evolutionarily, and it seems like the data supports it. And I just think in 20 years we're gonna be like, it's gonna be pretty standard that fasting is how we're supposed to eat, you know, fasting and then feeding.
Right, because from evolutionary standpoints, it says like as hunter gatherers, when the hunters would go out, a lot of times they weren't successful.
Right.
Just like it's like the tigers and the lions. A lot of times when they're going out and hunting and for these herds and trying to catch the slowest animal, a lot of times they're not successful. So you go a day, you go 2 days, and that's and I've noticed like throughout intermittent fasting, like there's days when it's been 15, 16 hours. If somebody has a cheeseburger like 2 blocks away from me, I can smell that thing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something to it, and it makes you more alert. It makes you sharper and things like that, which is kind of the opposite of what you learn as a kid, right? So they're like, okay, on a big test day at school, make sure you have breakfast. But at the same time, I look at that, I feel like to me that's counterintuitive, because I feel like, no, I'm not saying, and don't anybody take me for saying don't feed your kids on test day. But I feel like for myself personally, on test day, it's kind of better when I don't eat, because I'm hungrier.
100%.
I'm hungrier for everything in life, not just food, but I'm hungrier for success.
So true.
And that's kind of why I like intermittent fasting. So like if I was to put it in, if somebody was like, Steven, why do you like this? That is exactly why.
Well, the same neurochemicals that make you feel satiated in terms of food also make you feel satiated in terms of your situation in life, right? It's like, when you eat a big meal and you get that feeling of like, okay, all's well in the world. I could take a nap. It's, it's great.
Yeah. It's kind of like everybody around me loves me. I don't have to worry about if I'm being loved today. It's that same thing with the food. But when you don't get that food and you don't get that love, you're like, who loves me today?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a primal thing. I think that's more of like deeper encoded in at least myself. I can't speak for everybody. And that's the hard thing about like these podcasts. You can't speak for everybody, but you can speak for yourself and maybe those around you.
And everybody you've talked to though, because I mean, I'm sure most people, a lot of people that intermittent fast. I do too. I'm sure most of them agree that that's kind of what you feel.
Yeah. So I'm going to go into that even further, like sleep schedule. We've now are exposed to a whole group of the podcasts we listen to, the people we talk to at the gym. What's your thoughts on sleep schedule, and how much sleep a night do you get?
Man, see, that is probably my biggest...
This was also a question anonymously from somebody.
Yeah, this is probably my biggest health downfall of anything else is my sleep schedule. But it's weird because a lot of people attribute sleep schedules to, day-night cycles being interrupted by like blue light from our cell phones and stuff. When I speak to my family, they say that from when I was a kid, like a baby, I had to be rocked throughout the night, and then I would sleep from like 6 a.m. to noon. And there's been some work about different hormonal profiles in people with different circadian rhythms that are just natural. I wake up mentally more like it's like I hit a new gear that I didn't know I had at around 10 p.m. every day.
Right. I have that same gear, and I get it also at 1 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So, but fortunately, because of the way that I've engineered my life, I don't have a 9 to 5. I don't have to wake up super early in the morning. And I specifically don't think that there is some kind of moralistic value to waking up early in the morning. I just don't think so. I think there's a moralistic value to how many productive hours you have in your day. But for example, I don't agree with Jocko with that, where it's like,
you have to wake up early to win the day.
Yeah. If you don't wake up at 4 a.m, you're a piece of shit. It's like, well, okay, but you're also going to bed at, 8.
Yeah.
Because you're waking up
Well,
at
see,
4.
That's the kicker that nobody sees is he's going to bed earlier. I assume I should never speak for Jocko because
he's a freak.
Murder my life.
Yeah. He can probably do things that other people just can't
right.
do. Because
but then I want name dropped him a few times, but let's talk about Josh. Josh sleeps like 4 or 5 hours a night. Like there's people like that. And I used to be like that. And then I've discovered like, hey man, maybe if you slept a little bit more, you'd feel a little bit better.
But I love Josh, and I tell him that worries me because I don't think that that's sustainable.
Right. Because
term.
even all the sleep experts say that, that doesn't help for the longevity. But here's something I read the other day. So talking about, I didn't listen to the whole podcast, but it was the one on Thursday between Chris Kresser and then Dr. I can't remember his name, the vegan guy. And he was saying, he put out something, he goes, and it has nothing to do with the nutritional facts. He goes, it's okay if you believe in the carnivore diet, the paleo diet, this and that. He goes, but and it was essentially saying, but just remember everything, like whether it's sleep or whatever it is we're talking about, if it's something you truly believe in like that, you're putting your trust in these doctors, these scientists' life. And he kind of like, and I didn't agree with him at all on the whole veganism thing, but I do believe salads and all these greens are definitely good for
100%.
you. But then I thought about that. I was like, you know what? That's exactly what it is. We're putting all of our trust in everything it is that we think is beneficial and something it is that we are learning. So I didn't realize, like, I never really thought about that until recently, that we are 100% putting our trust in our beliefs and our thought process, our whole lives into these people's hands that we think are trying to do better for us. And it's the same concept of we're doing that with our president. We're doing that with, our coaches in our gym. Like everything in life, we feel like that we're putting our trust in is for the better. But that's the whole thing, is we have to be knowing and willingly to be wrong.
Yes. And ruthlessly questioning of your own beliefs, right? I feel like we always have to be revisiting our own beliefs. Otherwise, it's so easy to slip into dogma. Like even if you asked me a couple years ago, I would have been like, keto's the way, bro. Everybody keto all day, every day, Vegetables don't matter, eat all the fat you want. You know what I mean? Whereas now I don't have that perspective at all. Like,
see, I find myself like I get upset with my former self every single day because I feel like I'm growing in such increments, that 1% better each day, that I fell into those traps of believing the things that I thought were good. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, okay, now I see the bad in them.
Yes.
Do you find that, like, let's bring it back to martial arts. Let's bring it home here. Like, do you find that, like, even in your martial art, like, as whether an instructor or as a practitioner, that you're like, oh, that thing I was either preaching to myself or preaching to my students, that I see the flaws in it? Do you see the flaws in things, all those aspects of life, whether it's martial arts or your diet and what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I think we change kind of our general, attitudes about a lot of things at the same time, kind of like our ethos. We kind of molt and evolve that. And I think you keep little things that, maybe were correct and were effective. But I think if you're not having that intellectual turnover and you're not feeling like, oh man, how was I thinking that before? I was so wrong. Then you're not growing. You're not getting better. And you're going to keep, what seems to be consistently agreed upon is correct. But you need to constantly be ditching what's incorrect. And you can't feel bad that it was incorrect. You have to realize, like, that was your best estimate of what was right at that time. You just have more information now, and you've grown to have a new perspective.
Yeah. And do you find it hard to let go of your old ideals?
No. See, that's one thing that I've felt has been pretty nice for me. And I just feel like it's an aspect of my personality, is because I'm pretty self-critical and I'm pretty critical of things, and I'm not usually very attached to ideas because I don't look at them much as part of me as ideas. It's just like software updates. So like, this is just my current software. So like, if it's wrong, it's just wrong. I'll get new software. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I was wrong. So I've always felt it pretty easy to pick apart ideas, and like my favorite sport is arguing, is arguing with other people who have different ideas than me, because I feel like whoever wins that argument rhetorically wins that idea. That idea is right. If you beat me in an argument of ideas, that's my idea now, like I agree with you.
But that's never something you admit in the moment.
I'll agree in the moment. I'll be like, oh man, you're right.
Have you ever changed your mind in the moment? Because I can only think of a handful of times I have. Most of the time I have to go do some self-reflection. And then come back and I'm like, maybe that person was right.
No, I'll do it. I mean, it's like, to me, it's very much just the dialectic, and it's just like a sport, So if you were to come out with some points that were like, oh man, he's making sense, I'll tell you, and I'll be like
in the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
Even when you're heated and it's full passion.
I get heated in like that. I get excited, but I never get angry at that person for having a different idea, and I never really get emotional about my idea not being there. If anything, I'm like, oh man, I feel it slipping. I was wrong. No, I was wrong. Okay. Yeah. All right. You're right. This is a better foreign policy or whatever.
I feel like you're better than most people, and even myself, in saying that, because sometimes, like, depending on who I'm arguing with, if it's somebody in the gym, there's some things I just can't let go of. Now, if it's like in a relationship, I can kind of let go of it in the moment, unless that it's been so heated. When it comes to my mom and dad, I dang sure can't let go of it in the moment.
Well, that doesn't mean I'm not going to defend it, to the nth. Okay. I'm still going to try my best, to present my point of view as correct. But like there is sometimes a point internally in an argument or a discussion about something where you're like, I've exhausted all of my arguments and they've had arguments for everything that I've said and they're better than mine. Once I get to that point, I'm like, all right, I concede, white flag.
I think that's the keynote to take away here. If that was the keynote speech, that part right there is like, once you realize that it's like your jiu-jitsu, once your defense and you've exhausted every defense you have, sometimes maybe you just have to admit that the offense was a little bit better.
Yeah, that's right. And then maybe try to copy some of their techniques and practice them.
Dude, that's wild. I think you just made me a better person for talking to you and hearing that out. I don't know if I'm going to definitely be different moving forward from that one. But I want to jump back into another anonymous listener question. And this listener wants me to ask, why don't you compete? And if you did, would it be gi or no gi?
I think right now if I competed, it would be no gi, but just because I'm doing more no gi. So like the last competition I did gi and no gi, but my opponent in the no-gi division ended up having to pull out, so I didn't actually get to go into the no-gi division. Why don't I compete? I'm not sure. Part of it is I think I'm just kind of comfortable just doing jiu-jitsu. I don't feel like I need to, because I just enjoy it already. I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to train hard if I don't have this one goal of this competition, or I'm not going to lose weight if I don't have to cut weight. I don't feel either of those ways. I'm going to train the same amount of hardness, whether I have a competition or I don't. And then I think it just comes down after that to, I never end up thinking about it, because it's not something and people will be like, oh, Grappling Industries is like tomorrow. Are you competing? And I'm like, I had no idea Grappling Industries was tomorrow.
Yeah, you just don't keep up with the schedule.
I just don't keep up because I don't really care. And then I just end up not doing it. At the same time, I wonder about myself. I'm like, okay, is that real? Or do you have some kind of resistance to it? And I question myself on that. So, but I have competed in the past. It's not as though I've done no competitions. I've done like 7 or 8 competitions so far. So I don't know. I feel like part of it is just being too comfortable, just training and just kind of living the life and enjoying it.
I'm gonna do a little spin off on that question. Would traveling, like doing a tournament, let's say a competition in Las Vegas, would that appeal to you more than here?
I feel like that would appeal to me less, because like I feel like that'd be a drag
to go and
travel and like do all that.
What about the weight cut?
The weight cut doesn't bother me because I walk around at the same weight every day of my life.
What do you walk around as? Because I started out with some complete BS. Like, I have no idea. I called you 5'5", you're 5'7".
I'm 5'7", and I weigh between 145 and 147 pounds every day of my life for the past 10 years. So I know what I'm going to weigh. There's never been a question to me.
Okay. So do you think you're going to do one coming up now that there's a listener question, a little bit of pressure?
Well, I'm sure I could guess like 5 people off the top of my head who might have asked that question, but
I don't know. I mean, you do definitely know this person, but yeah. I'm not giving it away, but I don't think it's who you think it is.
Oh, that's why I said I have like 5 people that it might have been.
So after this podcast, I want to hear your guesses, and I'll tell you no to all of them.
Okay. But yeah, okay, sure, I'll do a competition. But I that's another thing I think is weird.
But I can tell you it's somebody who highly respects you.
I know it always is when people ask me that, but I always kind of wonder why people are so interested.
Well, I want to do another spinoff question. I have so many questions to everybody, but why don't you do MMA, bro?
Ooh, that's easy. I don't want to live that life, and I don't want the head trauma.
You just don't want to get punched in the face?
I don't want to get punched in the face for a living, and it just doesn't appeal to me. You know what I mean? And like I've done this kind of long enough to know what I do enjoy and what I don't enjoy, and I see the life of MMA fighters. Like, we have a good friend, Matt. Matt fights. You know,
I love that guy.
I know Matt's life, and he's a savage, but I just don't have that desire in me. You know?
Yeah, so he's got a pro fight coming up in Iowa, and I wish right now I was looking at the date to blast it out so everybody would go see that thing.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll put out. I'm definitely going to repost this post. I don't know. I've been a crappy friend. I should definitely do that.
We should somehow stream live from Matt's or like record a fight companion for Matt's fight.
Dude, that would be sick.
I'd be in.
But I think Matt would rather us have us there cheering for him in the stands. Like, I want to say that was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had. Were you there at Matt's Bellator fight?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Because I thought you were. I couldn't remember because there was a bunch of us, and I was, and after a while you just black out, especially after the alcohol and all that. But that was one of the most fun things in an event that I've never participated in, that I've known somebody.
Yes.
Like, no, it is the most. There's no other. Is cheering for Matt in the stands at Bellator. Like, Bellator and UFC, that's big league. That's so freaking big league.
I was screaming and like gripping my chair, and like it's just an incredible emotional ride to see somebody who you're like close with on that big of a stage, you know?
Right.
It's just like I kept thinking about it when he told me. I was like, wait, Bellator? And he's like, yeah.
Dude, it's so wild to think that we train with so many, and especially you, because you train at different places than I do, that there's so many legit human beings that are considered, bad mothers walking around the streets, and nobody has no idea what they could do to them, and yet here they are, human cockfighting in cages.
Although, to be fair, I think even if you're, completely inexperienced, and you look at Matt, you're like, I don't want to mess with that guy.
Yeah, Matt's what I love to call like the friendliest, special kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he's so nice too. But like when I first met Matt, like I saw him, I didn't hear him talk, and this is when I came to 10th Planet, and like I was, super like, this is the first other gym I trained at. I was like, are they gonna accept me? Everyone's gonna try to kill me today. And I looked at Matt and I was like, he trains here? Why am I here? Look at him. Look at me. Look at him. Look at me. Why am I here? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then I trained with him a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, he's super cool. And then we talked, and I was like, oh, you're just really nice.
Yeah. So dude, check this out. So when I had him on the podcast, and he's sitting across from me in the same seat you're sitting in right now, and I was, we're just talking about it all, and I was like, I bet it's hard to find sparring partners, yada yada. I was like, we're like the same size. He goes, yeah, we are. I'm gonna need you to come strap on some gloves. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, there's levels to this, bro. You know that more than anybody. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I told him, I was like, all right, teach me. I'll let you punch my face in.
Yeah, but the thing is, like with Matt, he won't punch your face in. He'll tap it a little bit. He's like,
yeah. That's what's so beautiful. Like, I have a top 10 list of people that have choked the life out of me. You're in that top 10 list, by the way.
Thank you.
So Juan, you are definitely in that top 10 list. Matt's in that top 10 list. Josh is in that top 10 list. Nate Orchard. That, like, I don't know what I was expecting.
When you rolled with Nate?
When I rolled with Nate, I don't know. Like, it was one of those days where I was just happy-go-lucky, and then I realized I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's levels.
There's levels to this. And so when I watch, EBIs and things like that, and I see these people, and as the average viewer, like, you're like, oh, that's cool, but like, how cool is it? I'm going to tell you, it gets super cool. And somebody who's so close to their black belt, like, you even can expand upon that of how cool that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it's been a big difference between like I done, for example, like Clark Gracie. He's really he's a great competitor. I'd done seminars with him when I was a white belt, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's really good, right? He like won pans, he's really good. And then like we would roll, and then he would do some things to me, and then I wouldn't even know where I was, and then I'd get back in line. And then the last time I did a seminar with him, I was like a purple belt. And I was like, oh, this is really great technique. And then we rolled, and I was like, oh my God, he's just like 18 levels, ahead of where I'm at, and he can read my mind, and then he can do whatever he wants. It looks sometimes from the outside when you're watching jiu-jitsu like it's kind of slow. They're holding this position for some reason. Why doesn't that guy just do this? This is ridiculous. But then when you're doing it, you realize you're like, oh, well, they're holding this position because I can't move right now because he's pinning me down.
So I want to talk about that. I feel like there's a 3D model, right? It's 2D when you're doing jiu-jitsu yourself. Like, you can only feel and see what you're doing and your opponent's doing. But when you're watching jiu-jitsu, you get the whole view of both people. And you kind of wish you could take that same perspective for yourself as you're doing jiu-jitsu as the third player viewer.
Yeah.
But you can't. You can only do it in the 2D view where it's just you and that person, and you can't see that aerial view.
Well, yeah, that's why every single jiu-jitsu match you watch, you hear a coach yelling like, hip out, do this, do that. It's like, well, the competitor doesn't know that. They're not, they're in they're in these other things that are happening, you know? So,
Right.
It would be nice, but I feel like at the same time, the more you do it, like, that's one thing I've noticed a lot is I know where people's bodies are way more without seeing them or even being like feeling their body parts.
That's the experience
now.
factor.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, okay, his legs are like this, even if I can't see it or they're not directly touching me. Like you can like infer by the way that the rest of their body is where the limbs that you can't account for are.
Right. Okay. Ooh. But that, I mean, that's so true. Like, but that's why there's those Monday morning quarterbacks talking crap because they can see things that you can't see in the moment. But that's to me the 2D view versus the 3D view.
Well, and yeah, and then there's like the 4D view where like that fighter is feeling things.
Oh, we're talking about the fourth dimension now?
Yeah, now we're in the fourth dimension of time. Like that fighter is feeling something that Monday morning quarterback has no idea. Like
that's the experience factor I haven't hit yet.
Yeah, well, he could be like, you know, there's times where you're in a really loose looking side control. And like from the outside, it looks like you can just get out. But like this guy his weight is on your one shoulder in such a way that you could never turn to your side, you know?
Right.
And it looks like it's like, you know, what is he doing? He's just laying down from the outside, but that person is feeling the reality of the situation from inside of it.
Yeah.
Which is always different.
It is like the people don't understand pressure, I think. And especially day oneers, they don't understand pressure at all.
No.
I think I had a little bit of knowledge through wrestling, but it still took me even time to conceptualize it into jiu-jitsu again as an adult.
Well, wrestling definitely I think would give you a much better understanding than most people, but like just the lack of space, like how suffocating another human being can be when you're like you can't move anything and you're underneath them.
It's a weird feeling when another human controls you.
Yeah, it's a terrible feeling. Like,
it is.
As somebody who's pretty small, that was my number one most hated feeling throughout my entire life.
Yeah, because like I mean, you know, because you way outskill me, outrank me, and everything. I just tell myself I'm a lot bigger human. Maybe I can control him, and like that would be a victory to me. And it never seems to happen the way I would like it to. But I want to get into two more questions. We're going to wrap this thing up. One of them, another fan question is, Juan, what is your 5-year plan?
My 5-year plan is to continue doing all the things I love. Step up running, you know, the school that I'm training at and teaching at, and kind of impose my vision on it a little more. Make it more towards what I want it to be, and that's definitely in line with like the current owner's plan. You know, he's definitely supportive of me doing that. I'd like to, you know, further my family, and maybe within 5 years, probably I'll have a kid, and continue to do jiu-jitsu every day and train people and learn about health and nutrition. It's like. It's nothing big and revolutionary. It's like I like the track that I'm on. I would just like to continue to go further down that track.
Okay, so you're kind of doing the same thing, just more responsibilities and potentially being a father. Do you want to be a father?
I do. I don't know if maybe like today, but like I definitely want that for my life.
Does it scare the shit out of you? It scares the shit out of me.
It's absolutely bone-chillingly terrifying.
Are you afraid you'd be good at it?
I know I'd be good at it in some respects, but I'm afraid of the not just the responsibility of another human, but I think about the little things. I'm like, what if he like cries at 5 a.m. and like I gotta get out of bed? Like I don't want to do that.
So it's the nagging things.
The nagging little things about, you know, everyday life that bother. The big things, I'm like, you can handle most of the big things when they come.
Yeah.
They're just scary beforehand. It's the little things that you think aren't going to be a big deal that end up being a big deal.
Yeah, you know what scares me is like when you finally get that relationship with somebody that you want to have that kid, and as I'm looking at you, I have like windshield over here that there's a couple of people in this room that we probably should not be having this conversation right now. We should probably wait for the gym night, but is I feel like because I'm all in or I'm all out. Like I don't know, because like if you build a relationship with somebody and you want to have that kid, I'm afraid that I can't give the same person that would be having that child the same love and same attention,
right?
Because there's something else introduced to the life. Like I don't ever want to take away from what got me to that point.
Right. Yeah. You want to remember what got you to the dance.
Yeah. So like if there's listeners out there, like, hey, maybe give some fatherly advice or motherly for the ladies that listen.
Yeah. You know, I think you can, as long as you're doing most of the things together, then I think you can kind of look at it as like a together building project. I think there's a lot of tendency and I happen to see a lot of families with kids, so I read them. I think there's a lot of tendencies by, one parent or the other to be unhappy, neglect their relationship, and then just put their energy into the child because it's easier. And it's a thing they're allowed to do because it's like, well, I'm just looking after the kid. It's like, what are you going to say that I shouldn't do that? But then they ignore their spouse. But I think as long as it's like a team building project, then it can make everybody feel better,
Yeah. I mean, it has to be a team, right?
Yeah. And then occasionally, you leave the kid with like your mother-in-law and then you go out on a nice date.
You got a lot of faith in your mother-in-law, sir.
I got a lot of faith in my mother because she's the one that's around here. So.
Okay. All right. We'll skip this rest of that. But the last question is, and it says, if you weren't doing jiu-jitsu, what would you do? But I want to explain, like, if you weren't doing any martial arts, I'm going to expand upon that. What would you be doing?
Oh man, I'd probably be such a miserable failure. I don't know, because I can't imagine myself working at a bank 9 to 5. Like, you want me to give up, a third to, 40% of my day every day to some soulless institution? I can't do that.
Are you bashing the institution or are you bashing Uncle Sam?
I'm bashing the idea of like doing something you don't want to do for like, more than a third of your life every day. You know what I mean? I'm not bashing people doing it. I just can't do it. I don't have that makeup. You know what I mean? So like for me, it's always had to be like, there's either going to be some kind of entrepreneurial venture that I have to be a part of, or I have to, do something with martial arts, or, those two things together. But like, that's it, because anything else, like, I'll be really unhappy. So I would probably be, working some normal job.
What do you think that, like, be specific. What was that normal job?
I don't know.
Don't pick a passion. Like, just pick something you would fall into.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a child, I really wanted to, like a small child, like I thought I might be like a corporate lawyer. So I'd probably be a corporate lawyer right now.
What kind of deranged kid were you?
I wanted to be a
fireman
kid,
and a professional baseball player.
I liked arguing. I told you. So I was like, who gets to argue for a living? All right, lawyers.
That's making sense.
Yeah. And so I would probably be doing that. I'd probably be like, pretty overweight because I'd be unhappy. And I'd probably be on some kind of psych medication to deal with the fact that I had to work so much. And then I just, ride it out till I was, either retired or dead. That's probably what I would do.
That's amazing, brother. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully I can get you on again. And I definitely want to have Sally on, and we can talk in the near future. And there's going to be some good stuff coming forward. And of course, if you want to be on, because I don't know if she wants to do it by herself, that's to be determined.
Whatever she wants to do, I'm comfortable with. We can.
But where can the listeners find you?
The listeners can find me at Chicago Martial Arts in Deerfield and 10th Planet in Chicago. And
what about social media? Blast it out.
Yeah. My Facebook page is Juan Orozco, and
I'll put it in the show notes.
There's a jiu-jitsu picture right there, so you'll see right away that it's me. And then Mongoose BJJ on Instagram.
All right, real quickly, how did you get the nickname Mongoose? Tell the quick version.
Josh, me and my friend Paulo were rolling, and he was like, "Man, Paulo's like a pigeon. Juan, you're like a mongoose." And then I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, you're mongoose now." And so Josh just, declared that was my nickname.
Just declared, yeah.
And I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna run with it. They fight cobras and shit."
Dude, I'm scared of snakes. That's maybe why you're my hero. All right, everybody. This is episode 20 of Head Kick Radio. Thank you guys for listening, and we out.
Say hello to the stars above.